What's going on? It is Adam. Welcome back to Bringing It Backwards, a podcast where both legendary and rising artists tell their own personal stories of how they achieved stardom. On this episode, we had the amazing opportunity to hang out with Ricky Reed over Zoom video. Ricky Reed has written and produced for some of the biggest artists on the planet. Ricky's produced some of the biggest records of the last 10 years. I mean, he produced 21 Pilots' Blurry Face album. He's produced all Lizzo's records, Truth Hurts, the new album. He's got 2 Grammy Awards. So it was super interesting to hear how Ricky got to where he is now. He was born and raised in the Bay Area, and I actually knew his project prior to the major success he has as a producer, but he was in this group called Wallpaper. And when I worked in San Francisco, we would play Wallpaper on the air. They were like a local band. And then they ended up signing this big deal. We hear about that. We hear about how he got into music, some massive turning points in his career, eventually starting Nice Life Recording Company, which has discovered artists like Lizzo. And we hear all about the current projects that Ricky's working on with Nice Life Recording Company. We would love it if you checked out our past videos and interviews. We've got the videos up on YouTube and on our Facebook page at Bringing It Backwards. It'd be amazing if you subscribed to our channel and liked us on Facebook, followed us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Bringing Back Pod. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, it would be amazing if you follow us there as well and hook us up with a 5-star review.
We'd appreciate your support if you follow and subscribe to our podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're Bringing It Backwards with Ricky Reed.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Cool. I'm Adam, and this is a podcast about you and your journey in music and how you got to where you are now.
Great. Let's get into it. I'm excited.
Cool. Well, it was really crazy. So I was researching you, and then I found out that you're from the Bay Area. And then, because I lived in the Bay Area from like 2010 to like 2014-ish.
Okay.
And I worked for Live 105, and I found out that you were in Wallpaper. And I'm like,
yeah, bro.
Oh my gosh, they played BFD. And I'm like, so I found the old poster. Like, I know you played at least the 2012. I think you played I found that you guys played 2013, but I had already left at that point. But you played the 2012 BFD.
Yeah, that was probably the one. There was one that we did in like kind of a tent type thing, and then one that was more
the subsonic tent. That was like, you did the DJ tent with like Knife Party, and it gets crazy to look at the lineup, man. It's awesome.
Was the subsonic tent 2013 or 2012?
That was 2012. I don't know, because 2013 maybe you moved to like a bigger so they had like the local stage, which I don't know if you guys ever played that one. But then the subsonic tent was more subsonic type artists like Knife Party, K-Flay would play in there, and those type of artists. And then you had the side stage thing, and then the main stage.
Oh, those shows were so fun. We also did Warped Tour in 2012. 2013. That came through Shoreline, I think. So every time we did something in that zone, like an outdoor Bay Area daytime show, is always just like the best energy.
Yeah, it's so cool, because I remember hearing you guys. Aaron Axelson was on. He did sound check, and he would always. And I was a weekend like swing overnight guy, like on a DJ. And I always did the Sunday shift right before he came in and did sound check. So he'd be like, "Oh, these are all the records I'm playing." So I'd be driving home and listening to whoever. I remember you play Wallpaper all the time.
That's rocking. I miss him. It's been a long time. I got to drop him a line.
Yeah, he's a great dude. Unfortunately, that station I think is called like Dave FM or something like that.
What?
Yeah, it's like they killed him, man. But yeah. So are you born and raised in the Bay Area?
Yeah. Born and raised. I was born in Berkeley. My parents, we bopped around a little bit. Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Guam for a minute, and resettled in the Bay by the time I was about 5, and then just was in the East Bay and literally until I moved to LA in 2010.
Oh wow. Okay. So that's wild to live in that many countries in that short a period of time, or states and Guam and everything else.
Yeah, we moved around a lot. I think they were, sort of on their own spiritual
Sure.
journey, trying to figure out where to like raise kids and everything. But the Bay Area ended up, really working out for us.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what was it like growing? You grew up in Oakland then?
No, I didn't grow up
Berkeley?
in Oakland. I grew up near Richmond in a small town called Pinole,
Okay.
right up the 80.
Sure.
I was there, yeah, all throughout childhood, which is a really interesting place. The Bay Area, is a really like beautifully diverse, like eclectic group of people. Even from like a young age, I can remember, some like kids listening to this kind of music and that kind of music. And I don't know, it was just like I felt like I got to grow up like around a lot of different kinds of people, and that had a big impact on me with the music that I would end up liking and the music I would end up making.
Sure. Did you have like access? Like how close were you to? I'm trying to think of the area you're in. Like Richmond had the BART station. Like, would you jump on that and hop into the city and stuff? Like,
yeah, I mean, once I got older and a little older and wiser, so I started going to UC Berkeley in 2001. I guess it was.
Okay.
And, it was interesting because I was kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out with the Bay Area. Actually, at that exact time for me was really strange because I had been in a band in high school since my sophomore year.
Okay.
And we were going for it. Like we were, like flirting with major label deal offers and like trying to like really do the thing. And so, even like my senior year in high school, my first 2 years at UC Berkeley, like we were touring a good amount and really like, we're going to become like a big band. It was like we were trying to literally like going for like the rock star dream at that age. And then, so I was like not fully committed to being at UC Berkeley, or I was kind of whatever. Anyways, some point I take some time off of UC Berkeley, the band falls apart, and then I go into my angsty sort of like prog rock band phase around 2003, 2004, really 2005. Really start touring, get more serious about being on the road. I'm not in school. I really feel like I started to, grow some hair on my chest, or whatever phrase you want to use.
Sure.
At that time, maybe literally, I don't know. I'm pretty young. But yeah, at that time I just started to like, do this like terrible broke touring and sort of start to see the world more and more. And in the frustration with that band also sort of hitting a ceiling, I started Wallpaper as a side project in 2005.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that ends up being the thing that brings me, back, not only back into the Bay Area to finish school, but I feel like the producer and the songwriter I am now, there's so much that happens for me personally. But 2006, 2007, Wallpaper, studying music theory and harmony and composition at UC Berkeley, studying under a Ghanaian drum master for 2.5 years at Berkeley, and then also just being in Berkeley and Oakland with Wallpaper and doing like, I'm going to make music so I can play house shows. Like I want to play house parties. I need more bass. I'm listening to all the Bay Area rap music.
Yeah, because Wallpaper is definitely more a hip hop group than obviously.
I just want to like play house parties and like meet girls. So, and I'm listening to all the hyphy music coming out of the Bay Area at that time. So that was really formative moment for me.
Well, just to back up here a little bit, how did you get into music? Do you come from a musical household at all?
Yeah, I come from a household that really appreciates music. My mom played some instruments, but she really just raised me on you know, everything from sort of Motown to a lot of like funk and soul and disco to the sort of the early 80s like LA sound, your sort of like Steely Dan and Doobies. She put me on to some early, prog rock stuff. Yes, Traffic. So that's going on in the house, but also both of my parents are independently employed, like they have their own businesses. And I think that had as much an impact on me as the music in the house, like just watching them get up every day and sort of like try to create their own destiny.
Sure.
And build businesses was also something that was really impactful. My dad is an endlessly creative guy. He's always building something, trying something. He's the kind of person who like could just build a cabin. Like I think he just built a cabin one time. He's like, I'm a carpenter. I can figure out most of the electrical. I'm just going to go do this. And that's sort of being in that frame of mind. Like I can just set my mind to something and just go get it. Was something they really instilled in me from a young age.
Yeah, that's a great skill set. I mean, growing up with more of like a entrepreneurial like household, it sounds like creating your own business or running your own business is essentially what you have to do as a musician or an artist. And like for me, that my parents were more of the, okay, you're going to get a job and then you're going to get in this corporate ladder and you're going to try to do that. And like, it's like the stability thing. I feel like it's cool that you had more of the, almost like the American dream. Like we're going to go out and we're going to create something ourselves and we're going to build that and into something that, your parents owned or they built within themselves instead of working at some corporate job or pushed a corporate job.
I think also too, like I like to, I have to add that I'm really, not only am I grateful, but I'm really lucky that I was able to have that experience, because I think that like, not everybody is in a position where they are like able to get after it in that way. Like the way that they supported me and frankly, even the way that their parents had, inspired and supported them. It's like not everybody gets the opportunity to just sort of like decide to go that route,
Sure.
So I don't know. I'm just really, really grateful for what they did for me. And I feel really lucky to have had it.
That's amazing. And what was the first instrument you played? Like, what did you get drawn to? I won't say that I was drawn to the piano, but piano lessons were the first thing I got. And I just I did not connect with it. I kind of tried to, I was like, can I do something fun? And we kind of tried jazz and it was too difficult. And I was like, ugh. But, I'm in the Bay Area in high school in the late 90s. This is like when Green Day goes from an unknown band to one of the biggest things in the world, right? Yeah. I mean, we're around the same age, just based off of your Wikipedia, and who knows if that's true. But and I grew up in San Diego, so I remember I'm relating to what you're talking about.
Unwritten law, bro, and all that
dude
stuff.
No. Oh man, you got to listen to the intro to my podcast. So Scott wrote it.
Really?
Sings it. Yeah, he's a great friend of ours. He played my wedding, my wife and I. He played like as we came down the aisle. It's so funny.
Oh, wow. Crazy. Wow, that's what a coincidence.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like, with that happening in the Bay Area, some of the guys from Green Day like went to my high school. So that was a very present thing. That sort of like moment of pop punk, round one happening. So I was all over that in high school. I was so interested in it. I was also had sort of a like middling basketball career I was trying to get off the ground. And the week of freshman tryouts, I got pneumonia. I was devastated.
Oh, man.
A few months prior, I had been given a guitar for Christmas and I hadn't touched it. But after I got cut from the basketball team, I was like, okay, I should figure out how to tune this thing. And that I sort of started down the path with the guitar then, and just wanted to write songs and play at the coffee shop and like sing Blink-182 songs to my girlfriend at the time.
Sure.
You know, it was kind of simple, and that's where it started.
Well, wow. You always kind of were drawn to songwriting, it sounds like.
I was
instead of learn, or aside from Blink-182, but like you'd rather do that than learn how to shred on guitar.
Yeah, I think if I'm being honest, I think the singing, like being a front person of a band, appealed to me. And I wanted to, at that point, I really wanted to just like have an outlet to express what I was feeling, which was mostly, just different permutations of like, I have a crush on you to
sure.
But like, I wanted to do that. And I idolized the different sort of frontmen of bands at that time, your Billy Joe. I was listening to, Incubus, like all that whole wave. As high school goes on, I start to get into, Mr. Bungle and Faith No More, like the Mike Patton thing. And I just like, I don't know, but it was funny because I always wanted to be as interesting as those guys, but I was never, as much as I wanted to front like I was just not a tortured kid. I just didn't have I just like ended up, while I'm doing all this and pursuing this sort of band thing, I also am working with a Bay Area producer named Scott Yamas, who had a label that my high school band was signed to. And he basically was just teaching me, just letting me use his studio, after hours. Like, look, if you want to just mess around with this to get it to sound how you want, just stay here and just keep working on it. And I was like, okay. So I was able to get my hands dirty a little bit with producing records as early as like 16 with Scott.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting how you kind of transition more into the role that you're in now. I mean, to have that opportunity at that age to go in and have, the board and everything else you can kind of probably mess with and figure out.
Right. Another super huge blessing to have somebody that was just like not charging me hourly. He's just like, I'm going to bed. If you want to do this, it's fine. That was really kind of him. And it really, without Scott, I would not have got the start that I needed to be where I am now.
Mm-hmm. And with that, so did you move to LA and when Wallpaper was already a thing? Was that going?
Yeah. So Wallpaper was popping in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
We could do, I don't know, we could sell out anywhere between like 700,000 cap, or 700 to 1,000 cap room. We were like getting covers of like SF Weekly and East Bay Express and, but I was still working 40 hours a week washing dishes at the Gap corporate cafeteria.
Oh wow.
A cafe. I was still had a really hard job. Even though the band, we were one of the bigger bands in the Bay Area. And I was
it's always fascinating to me. People just have such a warped perception of that. Your band's doing this and you've got, the cover, like you said, of SF Weekly and you're selling 1,000 tickets, but yet it's not, you're not just living the Motley Crue rock star life.
Not even close.
Right.
So I started to realize, and this is also where another really important sort of guardian angel in my life comes in, Bay Area manager Steve Brodsky, who starts managing Wallpaper and with David Lefkowitz, they were a team at that point. But Brodsky, he listens to some of my music because, like I said, Wallpaper at that point has a lot of hip hop, pop influence. And I'm still kind of playing in a scene of like indie bands or like some electro indie pop, but I'm very much rooted in this like Bay Area indie scene. And Brodsky was like, dude, have you ever thought about just like trying to go to LA and like write and produce for singers, like pop acts, rappers? And I was like, it was crazy because I had always dreamed about doing something like that, but just, I don't know, like had never had that sort of like validated for me by anyone. He was like, you should try, like, get out there and figure it out. So I started going to LA to see if I could give my career sort of another, almost more like a backup plan. I, at that point, didn't realize that songwriting and production could be such a beautiful, creative, artistic outlet for me. I thought it was like, oh, I can go down, I can, kind of like writing like jingles or something for commercials, which I was also doing. But I was like, yeah, I'll see if I can go down there and start, kind of dip my toe into that water. And I did that for a year of, borrowing my parents' car or driving a rental car down, working for 2 days, coming back up. I was doing that once a month or so for about a year. And I eventually moved down all the way, and I think in 2010. Okay.
And in 2010, or once you get down to LA full time, what was kind of the turning point there? Like, as, okay, I got in this room and then I was able to work with this artist to produce this record, or like, was there an album or a thing that happened that really put you in the space of all these artists that you work with now?
I mean, there's a lot of like really, important baby steps. I'm meeting all these really important people that will become like important figures in my career. Evan Bogart, Casey Robinson, my now manager and confidant and right hand, Larry Wade. I also, when I moved down, I moved into this big house that we could collectively refer to as sort of like a stoner house or something, with some guys that I met at a Wallpaper show. Two of those guys, Bradley Herring and Ethan Schumacher, keep saying Shoemaker, will respectively end up becoming the president of Nice Life and my engineer of the last like 7 years.
Wow.
Really cool. But anyways, there's all these important little, relationships starting. I'm starting to make a little headway. I get a cut with Far East Movement. I get a CeeLo cut with a friend of mine, Ross Golan, who's still a very successful songwriter, playwright. But the big thing that happens is Wallpaper is still like, we're still cranking. Like, we make, the Stupid Faced single. I made that in LA. Like the band is still building and growing. I'm trying to like water two plants at once.
Yeah, like juggle both careers.
Right. And we've been sort of still talking to some major labels about interest in Wallpaper, but I'm kind of getting a little jaded by it. At this point, I've been dealing with this music industry stuff for about, I guess, 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of just over it a little bit. 2010, 2011. So when Larry Wade calls me and says, hey, I'm down here at the Sony building with Tricky Stewart. I'm like, oh, Tricky. Yeah, he's a producer. He made Umbrella and Single Ladies. He's like, yeah, Tricky's an A&R for Epic Records under L.A. Reid. You got to come down and meet him. He wants to meet you. He heard your stuff. And I was like, wow. I'm like on a date with my then girlfriend who lives with me. I was like, I'm on a date and I'm not going to rush down there on a Friday. Like I'm out. And he's like, all right, let me call you back. He calls me back like an hour later. I'm literally in the middle of this date, and he's like, okay, L.A. Reid's going to be here when he's done with X Factor rehearsal. You have to get down here. L.A. and Tricky want to meet you. And I was like, oh, okay. So I go drop off my girlfriend in Silver Lake. So I'm in Santa Monica. I drop her in Silver Lake, and I drive back to Beverly Hills.
Oh, man.
And I walk into I meet Larry in front of the Sony building, and he's like, do you have any songs you can play on piano and sing? And I was like, what? Not really. I mean, I was like, I've been working on this arrangement, this kind of goofy, stupid faced, like lounge singer piano arrangement. It's kind of dumb. And he's like, can you play it and sing it? And I was like, yeah, kind of, like 45 seconds. He's like, all right, come on in. So I go into the sort of the like screening room at the Sony building in Beverly Hills. And there's a piano on the stage, this like room that probably seats 300 people, and there's just a piano, and I go up to it and I sit on the piano, and then Larry's sitting there, and then Tricky Stewart walks in, L.A. Reid, and Sierra, the artist.
Whoa.
Of all people. And
that's not intimidating.
Yeah, very true. And they're like, yeah, you gonna sing us a song? What's up? And I was like, yeah. So I did the song, and to sort of compensate for my lack of playing or singing ability, I sort of get into like a call and response with them and get a little vibe going. It ends up being really fun. It's a good little performance. And then I just stayed up all night with LA and Tricky, just sort of drinking tequila and talking about record production. We talked about everything. We talked about Quincy. We talked about Fela. We just talked about music all night. And that was a Friday night. And then lawyers negotiated all day Saturday, and Sunday I signed to Epic Records.
Whoa. As a producer, songwriter, producer?
As an artist.
Oh, as an artist. Whoa.
Wallpaper the artist.
Okay. So you signed. Wow.
So they probably asked, but they really don't even know that I'm really a producer like that. It's literally like this guy, whatever, they saw something in me as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
That's turning point 1. Turning point 2 is a much shorter story, but equally important, if not more. A year later, I'm working on the Wallpaper album. I'm in studios in LA. I've continued to get some cuts as a producer, but I get an email. No, not an email. I was in a session, and I talked to an A&R named Miles Beard. He was an A&R at APG Atlantic that time. And he says, yo, I heard this sample when I was on vacation in Tel Aviv. It's a song called Hermetico by Balkan Beatbox. And he's like, we've been trying to get somebody to flip this for Missy. We think it's crazy. And he played it for me. And I was like, oh my God, this is so sick. So I was like, yeah. I mean, I was like, you shouldn't have to even do that much. It's already so amazing. Like, what? Gotta just basically like make it bump, like give it a beat, So the next morning when I went into work on my shit, my album, I started the morning with like, oh, let me just grab some coffee and just like flip this sample for Miles. Just made a little beat out of it, sent it back to him. And then he was like, cool, great. I'm going to pass this along to Missy's team or whatever. And I was like, awesome. And then it was on tour probably about 6 months later where Evan Bogart was on the phone with me. He was like, hey, somebody played me Jason Derulo singing on your saxophone beat song. And I was like, Jason Derulo, huh? Cool. I mean, yeah, that's great. And then I ended up finishing the record, and probably in December of 2013 was the first time that I heard that the song was, I kept hearing from people like, this song like went #1 in Australia. And I was like, oh shit. And now it's in Germany. It's racing up the charts. It's like, cool. This is crazy. This is obviously back when songs weren't available everywhere at once. It was like they're releasing in this country and that country. And yeah. And then it was December or January where I heard it on the radio for the first time with this girl, Laura, that I had just met, who would end up becoming my wife. And I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, yeah, they're playing. This is my first time hearing one of my songs on the radio. That was like a song I had produced, you know.
Aside from, the wallpaper stuff.
Right. And she was like, whoa, crazy. She was like, wait, what did you do on the song? She was like, did you write the words? And I was like, no. She's like, did you play the sax? I was like, no. And she's like, what do you do? I was like, I just kind of make the whole thing happen. That's all I can say. And that would end up being a really, an early indicator of a conversation I was going to have lots more times with friends and family and whatnot. But that was a turning point. Number 2 was wow, making Talk Dirty.
And at what point is that kind of overtaking Wallpaper?
That's a really good question. So right around when we're talking about here, the 2013 is one of the most important years of my life. And there's a lot of personal stuff I won't get into also. But at the beginning of that year is when Steve Brodsky, my manager who told me to go for it, he passes away.
Oh, man.
From leukemia, which is tremendously hard and sad. That's also the year that, Wallpaper does its most intensive touring ever. We do Warped Tour, and then we do a tour with 303. That's, it probably ends up being a total of about like 4 months of touring that year for me, maybe 5.
That's a lot.
And Wallpaper's album, the major label debut, drops in the middle of that year around my birthday. And, it doesn't do all the things that I wanted it to do. It doesn't even do what I thought would be sort of a reciprocal amount of sort of business per the time that I put into it. Like the emotional stress of making that album, I just don't get it back. It doesn't pay back, not even monetarily, like just how it's like conceived. Yeah,
like the return on investment, like what you put into it, you don't feel you got back from it.
Right. So that happens, and I'm sort of in my feelings about that as I'm starting to hear, hey, your song went number 1 in this country. Now it's spreading to that country. This is happening at the exact same time. And Larry Wade, who started to move into a more manager type role with Brodsky's passing, because Larry was already on the team. He steps in here really wisely and says, you know what? Why don't we just focus on production for just a minute? Let's just see what happens. You're having a moment. You're really lucky and blessed to be having this moment. A lot of people will never have this moment. So let's just chase it down for a little and see where it gets you. And I was like, okay, I can accept that. And that's the beginning of the turning point that would lead me into a career of being a record producer and songwriter.
That's incredible. I mean, and obviously the what you've achieved since then is insane. I mean, you've won a bunch of Grammys, you've worked with Lizzo, and you even did the We Are record. So just tell me about going into your own, starting Nice Life Recording and how that venture happened and, kind of what you've got going on currently.
Oh, thank you. I mean, well, like most things, it's so funny because when I look back on this, I'm like, man, I'm not so great at planning and goals. I kind of just, say yes or no to what's right in front of me and then work really hard. And that's kind of been the structure of my career to date. And Larry, again, very wisely, you know, he's sort of putting some projects in front of me to build me up. There's Bomba Stereo is a really interesting thing that happens. You know, that this is after a couple years of working the pop stuff really aggressively, because after that Derulo moment, it's like, all right, we got to get another one on Derulo. So we do Wiggle.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, let's keep it going. I met Pitbull's manager, made this crazy track with this gang of hooligans that we used to do these like traveling music trips called Start From Infinity. We made a track that ended up becoming Pitbull's Fireball. I work with Fifth Harmony. My manager very wisely is like, all right, you're going to get pigeonholed if we don't do this soon. Don't make a move soon. Check out this band 21 Pilots. And I was like, oh yeah, Wallpaper's been on, I think they were on Warped Tour at the same time as
yeah, because they had been around for a bit or a minute at least before that record you're about to talk to came out.
Right. And I was like, you know, and the thing is, like, I grew up producing rock records. So yeah, let's try that. So we get to this interesting point where I've done a couple things for Atlantic, 21 Pilots, Icona Pop. There's a lot of that happening. And, you know, Craig Kalman approaches me and he says, hey, my guys, you know, Brandon Davis, Pete Gambarg, they say that you're the person right now that we should be talking to about this. We're interested in offering you a joint venture deal. You know, have you ever thought about doing that? And I was like, nope. And then, and Larry, same thing. He was like, bro, you'll get a little check for overhead. Why not? I was like, because I don't want to be a washed up like producer guy. I don't want to stop making records and just like work in a building. He was like, that's not how it works. Just try it. I promise. And I was like, okay. And then we did, you know, for the first few months, it was kind of quiet. My life didn't really change that much. I just kept doing things. And until, you know, he was like, Larry came back to me again and was like, hey, your agent, Matt Morgan, who's a guy who now works at UTA, but at the time he was at CAA, being my booking agent, he said, he also books this artist named Lizzo. He had me come out and see her at Terminal 5 opening for Slater Kinney in New York. And she was incredible. You've got to meet her. And I was like, yeah, fuck it. Let's fly her out.
Sure.
So she flew out for 2 days. We made a song called Worship. And it was just like, okay, we can't not sign her. This is crazy. Listen to her voice. Listen to her perspective. She's funny. She's incredible. Like, and Lizzo was kind of a no-brainer to get started with the label. And it would be another 3 or 4 years before she really breaks. 3 or 4 years of lots and lots of hard work. But I'm so glad that Larry pushed me to take that leap, because at the time I didn't understand what you could achieve with a record label. And now I understand that it's not just a vehicle for me to have a bigger fucking piece of the pie or something on an artist. It's the opportunity to actually affect real cultural change, to affect the cultural conversation. I get to pick who I think are the voices that are going to move us forward. And Lizzo, obviously, far and away, is the greatest example of somebody who is so brilliant, so forward thinking. And of course, you know, she makes incredible music and is one of the most brilliant musicians I've ever met. But I'm also so proud of like her role in just the whole zeitgeist and moving us forward. And that's what I get to do now, is just look for voices that need to be amplified, that are maybe a little bit out on the perimeter, and try to bring them into what will be considered, you know, household names sometime in the next 3-5 years.
That's so cool. That's got to be such an exciting job to have, you know, find these people. And it's interesting that you said that, you know, the Lizzo thing was a while. When I interviewed Sam Harris, I had no idea he was working on that record for a while with her before, you know, Juice comes out, and it was a hit, but wasn't Truth Hurts, but it was a big song. It got her name there. And then it was, she became the shining star. It was insane.
Yeah. We, with all of our artists, we really take this approach that's really, we're very, very diligent, and we're really sort of, I don't know, we just keep our head down and work and work and work. We figure out what's the thing that is going to grow the artist. And sometimes it takes a little trial and error. Like, okay, we put this out and we didn't really make a wave or make a ripple, or like, okay, we know this is dope. And even though this one didn't move the artist forward necessarily, we couple it with some tour dates. That's helping. We just figure out what each artist's story is. And then we just put our head down and crank on it. Truth Hurts. Well, Good as Hell first came out in 2016. Truth Hurts came out in 2017. Truth Hurts goes number 1 2 years later. And Good as Hell gets to number 3, has its own moment 3 years after release. So it's also just really good. I say this to young artists, like, if you put out a song and it's a massive hit song that in your heart, it's like you can feel that it's your big song, don't get discouraged if you continue to build, because it might be that your platform isn't such that it's ready for that song yet. But if you keep building, your song will have its moment, especially now more than ever.
I love that. Thank you so much for doing this, Ricky. I really appreciate it. You kind of answered my last question for you, but I don't know if you can wrap up one sentence, if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Oh man, it's crazy. It's really, it's 4 words. It's 2 ideas, but 4 words. Be yourself, work hard. And honestly, and it's, I've known about work hard from when I started, because I came up in my house doing that. But be yourself is something that I have now, with a little bit of age and experience, been able to understand. Oh shit, that is actually the shortcut to success. No one is going to be better at being you than you. You're already the best in the world at something. Like, you already are. But we get confused chasing what we, maybe something that we're really interested in that's a little bit outside of what we naturally do, or something that looks successful that's outside of what we naturally do. And if you are authentically 100% yourself, but you also bust your ass, you can get very far very quickly. So be yourself, work hard.